Hello everyone, this is Vaseem from Edureka and I welcome you all to this session in which I'm going to talk about the robot framework in Python. So let's take a look at the agenda for this session. First of all, I will talk about the robot framework in general, and then I will tell you about the installation, standard libraries, and built-in tools in robot framework. Moving further, I will talk about the test cases, keywords, and variables, and organizing the test cases in a test suite. And finally, I will give you an introduction to Selenium library and a use case for web testing using the Selenium library in Robot Framework. I hope you guys are clear with the agenda. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Edureka for more exciting tutorials and press the bell icon to get the latest updates from Edureka. Now, without wasting any more time, let's try to understand what exactly is the Robot Framework in Python. Robot Framework is a generic open source automation framework for acceptance testing, ATTD, also known as acceptance test driven development, and robotic process automation. It uses the keyword driven testing technique approach, and the capabilities can be extended by test libraries that can be implemented by either Java or Python. So let's talk about acceptance testing. It is a testing technique in which the capability of a system is tested, and the purpose of acceptance testing is to evaluate the capabilities of a system in accordance with the business requirements. Talking about the ATDD, or acceptance test driven development, it is a development methodology that is based on the communication between business customers, developers, and testers. They work in coordination and make acceptance tests in advance of implementing the functionality. Now, talking about RPA, or robotic process automation, it is the process of conveniently reducing the human effort in resonance with software that uses machine learning and AI capabilities. RPA handles high-level repeatable tasks. So now that we know what a robot framework is and what it is used for, let's talk about the architecture of the robot framework. So here is the robot framework architecture. The test data is in simple, easy to edit tabular format. When the robot framework is started, it processes the data, executes the test cases, and generates logs and reports. The core framework does not know anything about the target under test, and the interaction with it is handled by the libraries. Libraries can either use application interfaces directly or use lower level test tools as drivers. So this is all about framework architecture, guys. Let's see how we can install the robot framework on our systems. So the installation is pretty easy, guys. You can just use the pip environment, for which you can just type pip install robot framework. So I'll show you the installation when we are working on the project. Now before that, let me talk about the standard libraries that we have in the robot framework. So there are a bunch of standard libraries that we have in robot framework. So I'll talk about them one by one. First one is the built-in standard library. So built-in is robot framework standard library that provides a set of generic keywords which are needed very often. So it is imported automatically and thus always available. The provided keywords can be used, for example, for verification. I mean, for example, we have should be equal and should contain. So you will understand this when we are working on a test case. And it can be used for conversion, for example, convert to integer, and for various other purposes like log, sleep, run keyword, set global variable, etc. Talking about the next standard library, that is collections. Collection is a standard library that provides a set of keywords for handling Python lists and dictionaries. The library has keywords, for example, for modifying and getting values from lists and dictionaries. Example, we have append to list, get from dictionary, and then we have for verifying their contents, we have list should be equal or dictionary should contain value, etc. The next standard library is datetime. So datetime is a test library for handling date and time values. So datetime is a robot framework which supports the creating and converting date and time values. For example, we have get current date, we have convert time, and it also does a simple calculation with them like subtract time from date and add time from time. So it supports dates and times in various formats and can also be used by other libraries programmatically. Now talking about the next standard library, that is dialogues. So dialogues is a robot framework standard library that provides means for pausing the test execution and getting input from users. The dialogues are slightly different depending on whether tests are run on Python, IronPython, or JPython, but they provide the same functionality. Then the next one is operating system. Operating system library actually enables the various operating system related tasks which are going to be performed in the system when the robot framework is running. It can, among the other things, execute commands, for example, run, and it can also create and remove files and directories as well. So we can actually check whether files or directories exist or contain something. For example, we have file should exist or directory should be empty, and manipulative environment examples. For example, we have a set environment variable, etc. The next library that we have is process. So process basically, is used for running processes. This library utilizes Python subprocess module and its popen class. The library has main usages like running processes in a system and waiting for their completion using run process keyword. Then we have starting processes on background using start process. And then we have waiting started process to complete using wait for process, or stopping them with terminate process or terminate all processes. The next library is screenshot. So test library for taking screenshots on the machine where the tests are being run. So you have to notice that successfully taking screenshots requires test to be run with a physical or virtual display. And then we have a string library, which is used for string manipulation and verification. So string actually used for manipulating strings. For example, we have replace string using regex, and we have split two lines. And verifying the contents, we can use should be string as well. And then we have telnet. A telnet library is providing communication over telnet connections. So telnet library makes it possible to connect to telnet servers and execute commands on the open connections. And last but not the least, we have XML, Robot Framework Test Library for verifying and modifying the XML documents. As the name implies, XML is test library for verifying contents of XML files. In practice, it is pretty thin wrapper on top of Python's elementary XML API. So these are all the standard libraries that we have in Python Robot Framework. So let's take a look at the built-in tools that we have for Robot Framework in Python. So there are mainly four built-in tools that we have, which is testdoc, rebot, tidy, and libdoc. So these are all the built-in tools that we can use for test environment and everything. So talking about the test cases, guys. First of all, let me give you an introduction to test cases. Robot Framework test data is defined in different sections. The very first section is the settings section, and it is used for importing resource files, libraries, and variable files, and it is also used for defining metadata for test cases and test suites. Then we have variables, test cases, tasks, keywords, and comments. So variables, I'll be talking about that later on in the sessions. So let's move on to test cases, guys. The robot framework in Python allows the test cases to be written in simple English language rather than automated test cases. It follows a keyword-driven approach that resonates with the natural language in terms of actions and expectations. The test cases are constructed in test case tables from the available keywords, and keywords can be imported from the test libraries or resource files. Or we can also create the keyword table for the test case file itself. The first column in the test case table contains the test names, and a test case starts from the row with something in this column and continues to the next test case name or to the end of the table. It is an error to have something between the table headers and the first test. So you'll be able to understand this when I'm showing you these workflow and data-driven tests. So the second column normally has keyword names, and an exception to this rule is setting variables from keyword return values. So when the second and possibly also the subsequent columns contain variable names and a keyword name is located after them. So in either case, columns after the keyword name contain possible arguments to the specified keyword. Now talking about the settings in the test case table, test cases can also have their own settings. Setting names are always in the second column where keywords normally are, and their values are in the subsequent columns. Setting names have square brackets around them to distinguish them from keywords, and the available settings are, so I'll tell you a few available settings that we have. We have documentation, which is used for specifying a test case documentation. Then we have tags, which is used for tagging test cases. Then there is setup and tear down. We'll be talking about that later on in the session. And we have template, though, which specifies the template keyword to use. The test itself will contain only data to use as arguments to that keyword. Then we have timeout, which is actually used for setting a test case timeout. So let me just take you to PyCharm, guys, and I'll show you a few examples for our workflow test example, and then I'll show you a high-level test and a data-driven test as well. So instead of going to the PyCharm, I am going to show you these test cases in Notepad because they're written in simple English language, guys, so you don't have to worry about this. So first one is the workflow test example. So in this, we have test cases like this. And this is a test case. So user can create an account and log in. And I've used the keywords like create valid user, then attempt to log in with credentials, and status should be, that is. So this is a basic, workflow test example. Then we have a higher level test case in which we have test cases. So like user can change password. Then we have keywords like given a user has a valid account. So in high level test, we are using the high level keywords that we have in robot framework. And similarly in the data driven test, we are going to use variables and like this is, like we are actually taking the test cases to data. So we are taking data from the input like password, invalid length, and all those things. We have used the template settings as well, which is creating the user with invalid password should fail. So this is a simple example of how you can write your test. So moving on, let's take a look at the next topic that we have, which is keywords. So keywords are, the test cases in the robot framework are created with keywords that come from two sources. The first one is the library keywords, and then we have user keywords as well. So let's talk about them in detail now. So talking about the library keywords, all the lowest level keywords are defined in the standard libraries that can be implemented using programming languages like Python, Java, etc. The robot framework comes with test libraries that can be divided into standard, external, and custom libraries. So standard libraries are in the core framework such as built-in screenshot that I told you about. Then external libraries are installed separately like Selenium library, which we are going to use for web testing. So to use the keywords in the library settings must be imported. And okay, I'll show you an example to understand this. So we'll go to PyCharm now, or I'll just show you the example over here only. So I'll just remove all this. So this is how you import the library settings in your test case. So this is settings where you define your library, which is operating system. We are using a built-in library. So instead of this, we can also use Selenium library or anything that you want. So this is all about the library keywords, and we have library login library.py. So this is how we use the library keywords. Let's talk about the user keywords now. So I'll just copy the user keywords code. So this is how it is. So one of the powerful features of the robot framework is that we can make custom high level keywords using other keywords. So this is an example. I'll show you how it works. So we have keywords over here. First one is clear login database, and then it has remove file. In this, I'm given a variable which is database file. Similarly, we have for creating valid user. This is one test case. Then we have creating user with invalid password should fail. Then we have login, and keywords below are used by higher level tests. Notice how we have given, like we have used when, like she changes her password, a user has a valid account, she can log in with new password, she cannot use the old password anymore. So these are all the user keywords that we can use in our test cases. So you'll be able to understand this better when we are working on the use case. So in which I'll show you the web testing using the Selenium library. So this is all about keywords, guys. Let's talk about variables now. So we'll move to variables. The variables are a very important part of any test case in a robot framework. So any data in the test case that is subject to variability or change is best defined using a variable. So I'm going to show you an example. So this is a very simple example of variables. So we have a username variable. In this, I have given specific value. And then we have password, new password, database file, and password invalidness. So these are all the variables, how you can define them. Now talking about using them in a test case, normally you can just use the variable like creating a valid user we have over here. So we have username and password over there. So in that test case, it's going to be used over there. This is how we can use the variables. In addition to the user defined variables, there are built-in variables that are present in the robot framework, like we have temp directory and we have a backslash that we have also used in our example. And we can also use the variables anywhere in the test case. They are most commonly used as arguments in the keywords. So this is how we can use the variables. Now let's talk about how we can organize the test cases. So robot test cases are created in the test case files, but we can organize them into directories that create a test suite hierarchy. Collections of test cases are called a test suite, and every file that contains a test case also forms a test suite. It is possible to organize the test case in a hierarchy using the directories, and all these directories create a high level test suite that get their name from their directory names. So let me talk about setups and teardowns, guys. What are these and how we use them? So if you want a specific keyword in a test to be executed before or after, you can use the test setup and test teardown settings in the settings table that I've shown you over here. Okay, I'll just go there. So we have a settings table over here. So we can use the test setup and test teardown over here in the settings table. And we can also use suite setup and suite teardown to execute keywords before or after in a test suite as well. And you can also create custom setup and teardown in a test case, just like template we have used over there. So I'll show you an example how you can do that. I'll just remove all this. So this is a simple example where we have used, the suite setup and test teardown. So I'm using this in the settings table. This is how you can organize your test suite. And talking about tags, the robot framework allows you tags to give the latest cases free metadata. And the tags can be set in a file using force tags and default tags. So it is possible to give tags to a single test case using tags, just like template. Okay, I'll show you guys. So there are force tags and default tags. So this is a simple example, and after the execution, the report will have tags with the test cases associated with them and the statistics based on the tags. So now that we are done with all these, let's take a look at the next topic that we have, which is the Robot Framework Selenium Library. So the Selenium library in the Robot Framework is a web testing library that uses the Selenium tools internally. Selenium library works fine with the Python 2.7, 3.4 and newer versions. And in addition to the standard Python interpreter, it works with the PyPy and JPython except for IronPython. So you cannot use it for C# guys, because it's not compatible with IronPython. Now talking about the installation, it is pretty easy guys. We can follow the typical approach using the pip in Python, and we can use the command like pip install robot framework selenium library. I'll show you that when we are working on the test case. And browser drivers, let's talk about browser drivers. So after the installation is complete, you still need to install relevant drivers for the operating systems and browsers that you want to use in a test. So the general approach is to install the browser driver like Chrome driver for Chrome, but alternatively you can use the tool called WebDriver Manager, and if it will find the latest version when required. It will download all the links files in the right location, and it supports all major operating systems and supports downloading of browsers like Chrome, Opera, etc. And you can follow, you can use the command which is pip install WebDriver Manager to easily install the browser driver that I'm telling you about. So to tell you how you can use the Selenium library, to use the Selenium library, it has to be imported using the library setting as any other library, and it is recommended to use the robot framework high level keywords to write the test cases that use the Selenium low level keywords internally. So I'll show you a simple example how we use the Selenium library in a test case. So we'll go to the notepad again. So this is a very simple example how we can use the Selenium library in our test case. First of all, we have a settings tag. Inside this, we have to use the documentation and library. So inside the library, we have used the Selenium library. After that, we have variables, which is login URL and browser. And we have the test cases after that, which is valid login. And then we have keywords, so which is open browser to login page. And then we have input username, input password, submit credentials, and welcome page should be open. So these are all the keywords, and we have all these test cases over here. So this is how you can use the Selenium library in a test case, guys. Now talking about the use case, which is web testing with Robot Framework and Selenium library. So in addition to the test automation, Robot Framework can be used for other automation purposes, including RPA. And it has always been possible, but Robot Framework 3.1 added official support for automating tasks. So not only test, for most parts, creating tasks work the same way as creating a test. And the only real difference is in the terminology. So the task can also be organized into suites exactly like the test cases. So I'll be showing you that in the use case. And tasks are created based on the availability of the keywords exactly like the test cases. And the task syntax is in general identical to the test case syntax only. The main difference is that the tasks are created in a task section instead of a test case section. So we'll have a separate file for that. So I'm going to just take you to the PyCharm and I'll open the code for so I've already made a web demo over here. So I'll just open that. So this is my web demo, guys, in which I'm going to test. I'm going to do the web testing with Robot Framework and Selenium library. But before that, let me tell you how you can install Selenium library and Robot Framework as well. So we'll just open the settings. Inside this, we'll go to the project interpreter. And over here, you can see I'll just write Robot Framework. And here it is. This is what I have to install for this project, which is a general automation framework for acceptance testing and RPA. And for Selenium library, I just add a hyphen, and over here I'll just write Selenium library. So this is the library that I need for web testing. This is the Selenium library, which is also saying that web testing library for Robot Framework. As I've already installed all these libraries, I'm not going to do it again. So we'll just go to the project over here. So we have an app. First of all, let me show you the app, guys, what it does. So this is a very simple app, guys. Okay, I'll just open the template. Okay, it's running on this port. So I'll just go to the local server. The port number is 7272. So this is my login page, guys, in which the username is demo and the password. Okay, I'll check the password once again. So what is the password over here? Okay, we'll have to check the test cases for that. So I'll just go to the test cases over here. Let me just get the resource robot. Okay, the valid user password is mode. So I'll just enter mode over there. So login succeeded, log out. And if I enter a wrong password, I'm going to get this error page. So let's check the code now, guys. But before taking a look at the test, let me just show the HTML file. So we have a demo CSS. We have 3 HTML files, which is error, index, and welcome page. So in this, I have a few test cases, which is resource.robot. Then we have valid login, invalid login, and a Gherkin login as well. So let's talk about the resource. First of all, we have a documentation in the settings and library. We have used the Selenium library that I've told you about. After that, we have a lot of variables like server, browser. Browser, we are using Firefox. We'll change it to, okay, I'll not change it. I'll just keep it like that only. And after that, we have a delay, valid user, valid password, login URL we have, and welcome URL also we have, and then we have error URL also. After that, we have keywords, which is open browser to login page, and which is open browser, and then we have maximum browser window. So all these keywords I have, like login page should be open, go to login page, input username, input password, submit credentials, and welcome page should be open. So I have all these keywords. So this is my resource file, guys. Then we have valid login robot in which, and all those test cases files should be saved with a .robot extension, otherwise it will not work. And then we have a valid login robot in which I have all these test cases, which is open browser to login, and then we have input username, password, and all those things. So these should be tested when we are running this program. So we have a browser is open to login page, and then we have a username which logs in with the password, and I have given the variable as password, which you have in the resource file over here. So similarly, we have an invalid login robot test case file in which we have all these test cases, which is login with invalid credentials should fail. So inside this, we have the username and password and all those things. And login should have failed. So location should be the error.url, which is going to be that URL from that app which we have over here. This is error.html, and title should be error page. So these are all my files, and there's one more task file that I want to show you about. So this is my task file, guys. So tasks are basically, going to make a login report. So let me just run this program now. So to run my project here, I'm just gonna run this server.py file first. So it's going to create a web server, and I'll open that local server, localhost at 7272. So this is my server, guys. I'll just open the terminal now. To run the test, I have to write this robot and whatever your test directory is. So for me, it's login.test. So I'll just run this, and it's going to begin testing all those test cases that we have in the Gherkin login. Then there is invalid login and valid login.robot. So it's going to run a few tests. So we have mentioned the browser to be Firefox. So it's going to run all those tests in the Firefox, like, opening the browser and then checking if email address is valid, and then username and password is valid or not. All those tests are going to be run. And after the tests are finished, it's going to make a log.html and a report.html file in which there will be a directory, and there'll be a record of all those tests being successful or not. So this is how you can actually use Selenium library with Robot Framework in Python for web testing. As soon as the tests are over, I'll show you the log and report file, so you'll be able to understand this better. I think it's checking the valid login.robot file now, so it's gonna run a few tests. So it has created these two log and report file. So I'll just check it over here. We have a log.html and a report.html. So there should be a log. Okay, I'll just go to this directory, guys. So there is my login test report, and I'll also open the log report, guys. And this is my log test. So we have login tests in which we have total 8 tests, all of them which has passed, and there is a test execution log. So this is what you get after all these successful tests. There is a report as well. So critical test and all tests are there. So we have successfully created all those tests and tested this for web testing using the Selenium library in Robot Framework. So now that we are done with this session, guys, if you have any questions, you can mention them in the comment section, and we'll be happy to get back to you as soon as possible. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Edureka for more exciting tutorials and press the bell icon to get the latest updates from Edureka. Thank you.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!